أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. And welcome to another edition of Perspective. My name is Faizel Patel. In tonight's show, we focus on Yvonne Ridley's visit to South Africa, the ceasefire in Gaza, Hajj 1435, and we also look at some tech news. You can interact with me by sending me a mail on faisal@itvnetworks.tv. Send me a tweet on @Faizi143, or you can even drop me a comment on facebook.com/Faizel Patel. Yvonne Ridley is a British journalist and Respect Party activist. She was captured by the Taliban in 2001 and converted to Islam after her release, later becoming an outspoken opponent of Zionism and vocal critic of Western media portrayals of the war on terror. I spoke to Yvonne about her experiences of being captured by the Taliban and about the other stories in the Middle East. Have a look at this.
I'm a journalist and I'm also an author, and I'm living in Scotland, leading quite a quiet life compared to the life that I had in London. I've learnt to do a little farming, and I'm a beekeeper as well. This was just after 9/11. I was the chief reporter of the Sunday Express, and I went to Pakistan. The war of words between Washington and Kabul was very loud, and I was with about 3,000 other journalists. We were waiting for the war to start, and I felt that the best story was inside Afghanistan and to find out what life was like under the Taliban. And so I went undercover wearing the all-enveloping blue burqa, and I was there for 2 days to observe life. And then with my two guides I headed back, and unfortunately I fell off a donkey and ended up being arrested and detained by the Taliban. But I never intended to get caught. That was the problem. One of the things that I was trying to do before I went into Afghanistan, I was trying to get into an Al-Qaeda camp in Kashmir, and we were going to go there, and then my guide said, once we go in there, I have no control over these people, but if we go to Afghanistan, at least you'll be with two guides who know the area, and I think that you'll have more control. So I said, well, let's do Afghanistan, and it actually was a very good call, because the group that were wanting me to go to Kashmir were actually the same group that was talking to Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street journalist who was beheaded. So it was, in the end, a wise choice. But no story is worth losing your life for. And this is something that James Foley said while he was being interviewed a few years ago, because he's been into a war zone many times. I hate conspiracy theories, and I'm quite sure that 19 Arab men boarded four planes and brought to the world what we now know as 9/11. I do, however, think that maybe American intelligence knew more in advance. Maybe they thought that the planes were going to be hijacked, full stop. But I don't subscribe to the conspiracy theories. I was one of the first journalists to get into Lockerbie on the night that the Pan Am Flight 103 blew up over the Scottish borders. And I saw what an exploding plane full of aviation fuel can do, and it vaporized 4 brick stone houses in a street, completely vaporized them. The devastation caused in a scenario like that. So for me, it wasn't surprising that steel girders melted. It wasn't surprising that the building imploded the way that it did. And I have met one of the survivors who worked in that building, a remarkable man called William Rodriguez. And he said to me, not even a pizza could get in. He was involved in the security. He said not even a pizza could get into that building, the Twin Towers, without being signed for. So really, I don't know why these conspiracy theorists spend so much time and money. If there was a planned event to create 9/11, it would need a cast of at least 500 people. Well, the rules are simple. A Western life is worth far much more than a Muslim life, a life of somebody from Asia or the Middle East. That is the reality. Of course, we know it's not true, but in terms of news value, the death of thousands in the Middle East from the Gaza war, that's a statistic. The death of 2 or 3 people at a marathon in America, that's big news, because you humanize them, you give a name, you speak to families, and unfortunately journalists don't do that in the West, largely with people who are killed in the Middle East. The whole world knows the name of James Foley, a young journalist who was beheaded in a brutal fashion. But there was also a soldier from the Peshmerga who was beheaded in a similar fashion, and the same sort of film, yet nobody knows who this man is. I don't think it was staged, it was edited. We're both in the business of film and TV, and the film was clearly edited. For whatever reason, I don't know. I think that we can be sure that James Foley was beheaded. He is dead. It was a savage act. The setting beforehand and he was obviously reading from a script. It was, in terms of filming from a professional point of view, it was a very slick operation, and films are edited. There are many, many questions over ISIS, and this is where maybe the conspiracy theorists should really go to town. For instance, I would like to know why ISIS has never gone head-to-head with any Assad forces, why Assad has never attacked ISIS, why or how on earth did ISIS move from Syria through Iraq like a knife through butter, 200 vehicles in a convoy, and the rebel fighters in Syria at the moment cannot travel more than 2-3 vehicles at a time, otherwise they will be targeted by Assad's air force, because they're automatically assuming this is a convoy. 200 vehicles leave Syria and head for Iraq, and nobody targets them. The Americans, they have the satellite capabilities to read this watch. They didn't see 200 vehicles going into Iraq. Furthermore, militarily, those men achieved in a few days what the American military machine, the largest army, most sophisticated army in the world, couldn't achieve in 10 years. It just went through Iraq. So, and then you have to wonder, where did the money come from? You know, most of the young men who joined the other rebel groups did it out of the desire to be on jihad, the desire to protect their brothers and sisters from Assad's forces in Syria. My understanding is that the ISIS recruitment machine was full of money, regular money to the fighters. They've got a slick PR machine that any international corporate company would envy. Their standard of filming and it is sophisticated. And so you have to wonder, who are these people? Where did they come from? And if I can't understand something, then I try and work out who benefits from these people. The people who benefit, Assad, therefore, by Assad's nature, the Iranians, and of course, in the long term, the Iranian-backed government in Iraq, because that's another thing. The army just fell away. Not only did the army just crumble in the face of an onslaught from ISIS, they dropped their weapons and ran. Now, I don't know a single soldier, it doesn't matter how badly trained he is, who would drop his weapons and run. Maybe run away, yes, but he would take his weapons with him. They left this entire cache. They didn't spike them, they didn't destroy them. Just all these brand new, shiny weapons they left. And that didn't make sense either. The people who do not benefit from the actions of ISA are the likes of you and me, ordinary Muslims around the world. The West is looking, and they're, if they weren't scared of us before, they're terrified of us now. Hold on tight to the rope of Allah. This is a great faith, it's a great deen. There are many atrocities happening around the world. I think it's a test for all of us. I think that we're being challenged, and how we rise to that challenge will come to define us as Muslims. So don't despair, just get up and stand firm and hold on tight to the rope of Allah.
We're going to go for an ad break. After the break, we will touch on other stories that are making headlines. Stay tuned to Perspective.
أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى إلهي صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي أنا.
Welcome back to Perspective. Now that the Gaza war is over, we're going to reflect on some of the emotions that transpired over that 51 days. The skies over Gaza remained calm as a long-term ceasefire took hold, ending the deadliest violence in a decade, with Israel and Hamas both claiming victory in the 50-day war. Now, millions in and around the war-torn enclave enjoyed a welcome night of peace, during which there were no strikes on Gaza. Now, the agreement, which went into force on Tuesday last week, saw the warring sides agree to a permanent ceasefire, which Israel said would not be limited by time, in a move which was hailed by Washington, the United Nations, and the top of the world diplomats. Now, both Israel and Hamas hailed the ceasefire as a victory, but commentators took a more realistic perspective. A draw was the headline in one particular newspaper called the Maariv newspaper. And experts said that the two sides had agreed to hold their fire out of exhaustion after 7 weeks of fighting, which has claimed the lives of 2,143 Palestinians. Now, under the deal that was agreed upon, Israel will ease restrictions on the entry of goods, humanitarian aid and construction materials into Gaza, and it expanded the offshore and opened to Palestinian fishermen to 6 nautical miles. But talks on crunch issues such as the Hamas's demands for a port and the airport and the release of prisoners, as well as Israel's calls to disarm militant groups, will be delayed until the negotiations return to Cairo within the coming month. Now, despite the ecstatic celebrations late into Tuesday night last week in Gaza, Israel's reaction to the truce was muted, although officials were quick to portray the agreement as a resounding success. And you've seen it on social media, from moving away from the hashtag of pray for Gaza, Gaza under attack, you now see victory for Gaza, and Israel also had to put in their 2 cents worth. But Hamas also claimed victory, like I mentioned, saying it had caused Israel heavy losses in a reference to the 64 soldiers killed in the fighting in what was the Jewish state's biggest military loss since 2006. Now, on the ground in Gaza, the streets quickly took on some semblance of normalcy, with people going out shopping and heading back to work as workers sought to repair damage to electrical power lines and the phone networks. And if you've seen the damage on social media, it was extensive. I always ask the question, and a lot of people on social media were asking the question, what was there left to bomb? Because everything looked in ruins. So what was there left to bomb? The cost to Israel was huge. Beyond the 70 people killed, all but 6 of them soldiers, the economy has been set back, the tourism season destroyed, its people rattled for 50 days, and its global standing plummeted by images of devastation in Gaza. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces bristling from the people who sense that Hamas controlled events and could not have its grip loosened on the Gaza Strip, which it seized by force from the Palestinian Authority in 2007. Now, around the corner, the international investigations into war crimes allegations also is haunting Netanyahu as well in Israel. The United Nations estimates the war destroyed or severely damaged 17,200 homes. 2,000 homes, and left 100,000 Palestinians homeless, with considerable swaths of Gaza in rubble. So absolutely, joyous that the ceasefire has come into effect, but also now is where the work starts. The rebuilding of Gaza, the damaged buildings, the schools, all that needs to be rebuilt to get your life back to normalcy. We had Dr. Mads last week. He also explained the catastrophic way the buildings were destroyed. Another, obviously, sideline on this particular story is the many journalists that have covered this particular issue. And I think the responsibility on Muslim journalists was even more tremendous as opposed to Western journalists. I myself covered the story. It was a huge pressure, the emotion, trying to sort of create a report on an impartial nature was quite difficult. But a lot of people have said that we maintained the impartiality, the objectivity, and also brought to the facts. I have written an article onto this effect. You can read it on my website at faizelpatel.com, and it's called An Eye on Gaza. This is the way I reported it, the emotion of reporting on such an issue, to detach yourself and to be objective. And like I mentioned, the responsibility on Muslim journalists was just so overwhelming. So go to faizelpatel.com and read that article, An Eye on Gaza. Coming on to another story that we're touching on, the South African Hajj and Umrah Council has suspended a Hajj operator for irregular activities. We know that Hajj season is now in full force. Inshallah, ITV will be bringing you full coverage of the Hajj as well. Now, but this obviously is disconcerting. Now, in a statement, Sahuk said that it had suspended a Hajj operator called Al Huda Bulan Hajj Jama as an accredited Hajj operator with immediate effect for non-performance of financial obligations and contravening of the Sahuk Hajj Operator Code of Conduct. Now, the South African Hajj and Umrah Council has been in regular contact with the affected Hajis, and following a meeting with them has taken the necessary steps to ensure that those who Hajj fulfill their trip to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for Hajj by way of an amended package. Now, this is according to Hassan Chunara. He's the Secretary General of Sahuk. And as the time of this program plays out, we understand that those Hajis have gone with Boulay's travel, and Alhamdulillah, they have made their way to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to inshallah perform the Hajj. Now, meanwhile, the South African Hajj and Travel Association, like I mentioned, the chairperson, Siddiq Steenkamp, confirmed on Sunday that the Hujjaj will depart or departed on Monday rather, the 1st of September as planned. And like I mentioned, Boulay's Hajj Jama'ah in Gauteng will take full responsibility for the Hujjaj in Saudi Kingdom and has pledged full support for the Hajis. And this is what Steenkamp said. And then he goes on to say, we make shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who guided us through this difficult week. According to Sahuk, it will proceed with disciplinary action against the suspended operator. So what I'm saying here is that we need to be careful that Hajj is a long-term savings. You need to save. To go for Hajj, the minimal amount is plus minus maybe 30 to 40, even 50,000 rand per person. And when you go there, you still need spending. And unfortunately, sometimes you get a person that has got this ideas that they can sort of make a quick buck from the Hujjaj, and obviously this must be brought to the fore. And fortunately, that Sahuk managed to stop this action by this particular Hajj operator. Now we're coming on to our tech news. If you're getting excited at the prospect of wrapping an iWatch around your wrist, you might want to take a deep breath. Although Apple is likely to reveal the iWatch to the world at its upcoming 9 September event, you won't be able to buy it until early 2015. Now, according to sources, the iWatch won't arrive at market for about a few months, and it's not shipping anytime soon, noting that the first iPhone was only out to retailers 6 months after its unveiling. Now, this could prove to be the same with Apple's first wearable device. Speaking on before the watch as well, you must remember that the iPhone, like we mentioned in a previous program, will also be launched on the 9th of September. So look out for that as well. That is a normal norm by Apple to launch these particular products. And there's a lot of hype around it. We know that Samsung has been taking certain segments of the market. LG has come out with a new Flex, which is a phone that is totally curved, absolutely brilliant phone, but a little big for my liking. I tried it out. It's very difficult to type with one hand. So when you're on the move and you need to read your messages, it's very difficult to do it with one hand. Now, in addition, the iWatch will reportedly come with a hefty price tag, and normally these things are. It's very, very expensive. And because it's Apple tend to have this whole stigma of it's the best, and it's also usually very, very expensive as well. The iWatch reportedly with a hefty price tag of about $400 equated at the time of going to when we report on this program, you're looking at plus minus 4,270 Rand price tag. Now, putting that into perspective, the LG G Watch costs just about 160 pounds, which is about 1,700 Rand. Now, the iWatch looks like it will be competing with Timex's upcoming Iron Man 1 GPS Plus smartwatch, or even the Samsung Galaxy Gear, priced at about $400 again, which you look at about 4,270 Rand, and then 300 pounds, which is about 3,200 Rand respectively. Now, there is some hope for Apple fans whose wallets are already weeping, and this, that's what it is. When these things come out, it's huge money. It's a lot of money. So for those that are interested, of shelling out some amount of money and weeping at the prospect of shelling out for the iPhone 6 and iWatch and new iPads, the iWatch pricing is yet to be finalized. So although we've given an indication, it might be exactly that price and may not even be announced on Apple's 9 September press conference. Particularly interesting is the source's claims that there will be a range of prices for different iWatch models, suggesting there may be a lowered price versions of Apple's first wearable device. So We're looking forward to that. Inshallah, I will bring that to you as soon as it's launched. Look out for the 9th of September. It's not a live event on television, but you can surf on the internet and check out the streaming of that. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of another edition of Perspective. Join me again next week, inshallah, where we cover stories that are making headlines locally, nationally, and internationally. From myself and the team, fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى سرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي أنا عبد لرد الضيم لا يقوى أعني